Thanks a lot. It's not something I'm accustomed to at all. And I did warn the guys that I took up to Darren that it could take 5 hours, and they said that's all right as long as we can go out and come back later. And so if you get a bit bored, do that. And I will try and be quick, but I think photos speak a lot for themselves, and I'll just roughly tell you a story. I'm, as about as West Australian a farmer as it's possible. And I want to talk about both families, but my mother's family only briefly. And so her mother's great-grandfather was James Drummond, who was a botanist at the original settlement, so he came on the first boat to Perth, to West Australia. But then her mother ended up on a station up here, and so my grandmother ended up there because she married a chap whose both sides of his family had gone up around there and started as pastoralists as early as my family, my father's family, was starting farming here. And that's, I admire my father's grandfather for what he did, but what the other people did was just extraordinary. They were so isolated. The seasons were totally unpredictable. Initially, the Indigenous were more of an issue, and I've become very attached to that story over time, and I've sort of got a bit of time to study my family. But I'm really talking about wheat belt farming and my side of the family. So I will now be as quick as I can. So this is a station. I'm just briefly on my mother's family. This is a homestead that was built in the early 1900s, way up there. They were 160 kilometres from Roban. That's the nearest settlement. Nearest neighbours were probably 40 kilometres. My grandfather, was enlisted for the World War the day it started, or the day they called for people in West Australia. He saw it as his role as the eldest son of the family. So he went to Gallipoli, saw the whole campaign there, and then spent the rest of the war on the Western Front. Came home with both legs, except when he was badly wounded, his leg is in London to have it cut off, and that's only a carton of beer. Or was it more than that at AHRI?
It's a carton of beer.
He went AWOL, he disappeared from the hospital because he didn't want his leg cut off, and he came home with 2 legs and could walk quite all right and limped a bit when he was tired. He married my grandmother, who was a Drummond, as I referred to, and off they went up to the station. His father built a home in the Middle Swan, a grand home. He retired as sort of secession happened. This is them down there. This is my grandfather. This is my mother as a baby, and her grandmother is my grandfather's brother. The other 2 children in the family. This lady is my aunt. She's still alive, 93. And they used to come down perhaps once a year to Perth. So they've got a trailer full of stores. This is my grandfather. This is a Tableland Road Board. It's sort of an organisation, like it's a shire. It's huge. This is Lang Hancock's father. The Gordons at Mill Stream. There's a lot of history up there. The trucks that they used, the infrastructure wasn't good, and it's huge. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about the Indigenous, but both sides of the family had the highest regard for the Indigenous, and on the station country there was over 60 people lived there until they were forced to leave because they had to be paid huge wages. And some of these kids were my mum's best friends, and these guys were stockmen, and some of these ladies helped in the house. It was all quite amicable. My grandfather unfortunately died when he was 42, very tragically, and his grave, that's the original grave, was put there. They buried him on Christmas Day. And my mother was 6. 4 years later, my grandmother went back to Perth, abandoned, left the station, walked off. That's the homestead now. The station is still operated by a neighbouring station. That's the Hamersley Ranges. This is a country that there's there's rivers and that, and there's old buildings. There's stuff like that on this station. It's beautiful. And I've just been up there to repair my mother's ashes, my grandmother's ashes, and my grandfather's. So that's that story. And there's, there's sturt peas, a bit of the country. So we'll get back to the real story I want to talk about. So my great-grandfather, he was a lawyer in Melbourne, had tuberculosis, the doctor said go to a drier climate. Would have preferred the doctor to say go to a more reliable rainfall area when I worked. But so he came to West Australia, spent 2 years in York working on farms, loved farming, bought some sheep and chased them out to Calabarin. And in no time he had become a very good farmer. So he was the 4th farmer to come to the district. He built this homestead, etc. He also, this is just out of Calabarin. He also bought the farm of, that's the core of it, our farm, which is 30 kilometres away. He bought that then, but he never established it. He bought it, and his son, my grandfather, established it. So this is my grandfather, great-grandmother, and this is my grandfather and grandmother on their wedding. That's my grandfather not long before he passed away. Now these are the buildings that I'm sorry about the quality, but that my grandfather built. He established this farm not far from where he was born, and he had 10 children, 4 boys. This is my father, he was the youngest. This is the homestead he built. That's my father with his 2 younger sisters going to school. They had social occasions. They built a tennis court on Sundays. They'd have church and tennis. These are the buildings my grandfather had built. Ag department, there's a document. They recommended that any person that was developing a farm come to see what my grandfather did. He did everything properly. He had a highest passion for sheep. He bred sheep, and he bred the Clydesdale horses, and he had a Clydesdale stud as well. So he was a real stockman, to the point that he became this is actually my father. He's one of his brothers and one of his sisters. This, it's shearing time outside the shearing shed, having a cup of tea. He started the 3rd stud in the state, as in the stud. People went to Darren, got a good talk on merino sheep. So my grandfather, so long ago, he imported stud rams from South Australia. They'd come over on the railway line, and he used to sell 100 rams by auction on the property, which was extraordinary in those days. People would come from probably nearly 200 kilometres away to go to that sale. Now there's always work to be done. In the old days, that's a forge. They had to sharpen something. That's fencing hard. That's my father and his brother clearing, working in the yards. Well, I jumped one. What I do? Go back. Yep, making all the wooden gates. They did everything. It was all hard work, cutting fence posts. I want to talk about the horses now. That's how all the work was done. And when I was young, and my father and his brother were still in partnership, when I'd go out to the other farm where my uncle was, one of his brothers, he still used the horse and buggy to do everything. And I can remember riding around the horse and cart, and that's what they used as their ute, their mobile. So this is horses ploughing. They had all names. They had the highest respect. These guys are seeding in a paddock that's on my farm, and you see the bags here. They've put them there on the corner, and so as they come around, they put some more seed in the seeder.
So do they have GPS guidance?
That's a good question, Ken. I must look into that. I like questions, actually. I don't mind some comments. No, they didn't. But do you know what? Those horses were smart. They were treated with great respect. They treated the owner with respect, and they would, this one here would know to follow the furrow. And when you see harvesting one,
it looks like they're raking there.
No, there's a seeder behind, another photo, and you'll see. Yeah, they're seeding because they've got the bags of fertiliser and wheat there. But I can't quote, but I know this paddock's a big paddock. It used to take us probably nearly an hour to get around it when initially opening up. They might have taken half a day to do half a lap, But they didn't no different. And
in which year do you reckon this happened?
This happened. My grandfather insisted on keeping horses. He was a very innovative farmer, but he believed in horses, and he also believed in natural pastures. So he sort of got stuck in that. You hear about generations like that. And so eventually my father begged him. He said, "I'm going to leave unless we can have a tractor." 2 new tractors turned up the next day. But that wasn't until about 1961. So it's not that long ago. So he started farming in the 1900s. So for 60 years, well, prior to say 1960, they were using horses to do the field work. That's a cedar. There's a little box on it. There's another cedar. Now, of course, they use them all. The sheaves would have been cut with horses pulling them. That's a huge stack of hay. They take it in, stack it. They also cut chaff. Here's a harvester. It looks pretty ragged, but, you know, the horses pulled it. Horses knew not to eat the wheat. You know, they all learnt that. Another little trolley. Now, this is an interesting story for me because this is actually on our farm. There's no natural water, and so the rainwater was caught in odd bore. We have very little underground water, so dams are a solution. This dam is iconic. That's all granite rock. So they used horses to dig that hole. They'd rip it and then use a scoop to drag it out with the horses.
So, Kate, do they have a weed control?
The
Weed control.
The weed control came from ploughing, just physical. Yeah, and when they're seeding it back here, it's good to ask this, and I might have to do it in 2 shifts this show. Here we go. Oh, it's better that one, I think. Yeah, behind there, actually there's a bit of dust. There's little finger harrows, no different to sort of some of the implements we use now. So if the weed it's been cultivated, and then it'll get knocked and knock the soil out.
So every year they do the same cultivation.
They started a bit later, didn't they, after the weeds?
And you know what? There weren't many weeds then, you know. They hadn't been introduced, and they couldn't control them any other way. But they sometimes used to fallow plough it the year before and keep it bare, which is terrible for the soil. So that's sort of the dam completed. There's a windmill put on that pumped water all over the farm on our farm. That he built similar sheds, but no one lived there. They used to come out all week and work there and live in this cottage, which when I got married, we lived in for 5 years. That's the sheep yards on the property, and they're all local rails. The jam trees and acacia are very hard wood. The white ants can't touch them. We've got fences that the fence would have been built early 1900s, and some of those posts are still solid. There's great excitement when they bought a motor car. My grandfather, he knew how to handle the dingoes. The dingoes were a huge issue with the livestock. No one could work out how to trap or poison when my grandfather worked there. He understood nature, he understood animals. Agriculture department got him to write a document. There's a bit of fun, some friends up, got their motorbike. This is my father, best friend. His brother was in the army before him. All 4 boys joined up. Dad, this is the Second World War. Dad, his father got him out. He couldn't run the farm without any of his sons, and it broke Dad's heart. He got trained, but he couldn't go. Shearing got mechanised. I'd done with the blades before. This is a wool press happening in the shed. This is my father. He married my mother. They lived in this house. I was born in this house. Admittedly, that's what it's like now, but we left that in 1961. It's first tractor, great excitement. There's me, we're on the beach. This is the house that Mum and Dad built, that my father did a lot of work for it. It's a great homestead. I basically lived in there all my life, of course, and now my daughter is living in there, and I sort of feel very proud and that was built where the sheds were built that the grandfather built. I loved animals, and it's my sister. Now we get into more progress. So we've got tractors. This is a proper plough, and we join 2 tractors together to give it extra horsepower to pull the plough. Now the plough that my father bought was the biggest in the state at the time, and they wanted Massey Ferguson. They wanted to take a photo of it and put it in their calendar. So the Massey Ferguson dealer organised a better looking tractor for the photo, but that's my father. That's our land, and that plough. My father was buying machinery innovative. He's pulling the plough with 2 old tractors. You sat in one and operated the clutch hand.
You got the front axle off that back tractor.
Pardon?
You got the front axle off that back tractor.
That's right. Yeah, they just hooked up together. It's like a 4-wheel drive, but it's just 2 tractors. It's exactly like a 4-wheel drive. Yeah, but you're operating 2 clutches, etc. Throttles. Yeah.
That's the early 1960s, is it?
Yes. Yep. I can remember that. Yeah, like that's right. I reckon it was about '61 that the horses stopped, and a couple of years and just one, and then suddenly that Dad got enthusiastic and caught up because his father had retired. And so this is a classic, you know, I can remember this. So there's a truck with seed and super and bags and the combine, and here, that's a great example. We're still only using cultivation for weeds. There's no chemicals at all, but that's making a fine seed bed, and if there's weeds on there, they've been hit with a tine and then smooth over with that, and very few would survive unless it actually rained that day or something. But there's a lot of physical work involved, a lot of dramatic, you know, and harvesting had got mechanised. That's my father.
What month would that have been?
The seeding, we always, I think we aimed to finish by the 30th of June, but, and you know, it used to rain in those days, and so they would plough when the first rain happened, even if it was a summer rain, and then we'd cultivate to kill the weeds, and we'd wait for a germination, then wait for a germination so we did manage the weeds.
The end of June.
Yeah, but earlier, but I don't think any crop would have been put in on the 1st of May because you wanted to kill weeds. Yep. And you know, this crop would have been 1.5 tons per hectare, but that's the best crop ever grown. You know, like, it was very exciting. That's my sister.
Were those tall weeds?
Oh yeah, they were tall and bald too. They weren't whiskered. Yep. Now, you know, I'm going to talk about some adventures. It's not all hard work. We went on a great adventure. Now look, that's a Nissan car, and we drove that to Kununurra. And honestly, the road from there to Kununurra was, a lot of it wasn't hardly road. You know, people, 4-wheel drives and walkie-talkies and all. Off we just headed off.
No. Explain what.
Oh yeah. These are water bags. So they're a Hessian bag that you put water in, keeps it cool. Yeah. We didn't have any refrigeration at all. We didn't have a tent. It was just camp. Now, then I went away to boarding school, so of course I played sport. I think I studied a bit. That's me, look, handsome bloke.
Played rugby, didn't you?
I played rugby in the last year and I got colours for it. Couldn't play football for nuts, and I wasn't going to play any sport because I was
Who was it?
Wesley.
Wesley.
Yeah, I loved rugby actually. Then I came home. I was always going to go home farming, and then I got a scholarship to do accounting. And I said, Mum, I might do accounting for a while. And she said, like hell you will. Your father's been waiting for you to come home. And I didn't mind, it's just a nice story, but we were still very passionate about the sheep. My grandfather, at succession, he closed a stud because he didn't think his boys should run his stud, but my father started a stud himself, and we still had horses. When I came home, we had pigs, cattle, we used horses for the stock work. We had a sheep stud and stud, and we grew oats and wheat. And the stud thing was sort of quite a big outlet and exciting, and I'll just flash through some things that are relevant. We used to have a field day. Here we go, a bit more flash of harvesting gear. One of the great journeys, my father, when things started to line up for him, he bought himself a Mercedes, and it was his trophy for his life's work. He told me, and he's probably right, he paid $10,000 for that. But he said, I never smoked, kit, so I was able to buy a car.
So, by the way, when I retire, I'm buying myself a Mercedes.
Yeah. No, it was a, you know, you'll see what I've done with my spare cash and that. You know, this is all sheep stuff. It's we were proud. We grew good stock. That's my first vehicle. Now we get a bit more mechanised. It's got a sealed cab, the tractor. Before all weather, you just had a coat on. There's a radio in there. And now we got bulk. So we got seed and fertiliser that we auger into so it all made it quicker, easier, more efficient. Still no chemicals. Sheep game is still a very important part of it. That's me shearing. Then I got a vehicle, panel van, and I basically went around Australia in it, which is a great journey. Just working on farms, camping on my own. We built a shed on the farm, Dad and I. Then I got married to my lovely wife Eileen. 40 years very soon. And we lived in the cottage for 5 years. We put power on there, grew a vegetable garden. Rural youth was a very important part of the country for the half a generation before me and finished soon after me, but that was anything from learning how to ice a cake, public speaking, judging sheep, running meetings, raising money for charity, and when I was president, we were the champion club of the state. As my father, by now he's shifted to town or whereabouts. He could shear with the blades, that's blade shearing. So one time while he was shearing, he's just showing the shearers how to do it. And we shifted into this house, a homestead. Mum and Dad built a house in town.
You say town in
Killabarron. They built a house in Perth. As they finished it, Dad said, I don't think I'm going to Perth. That's another story. It's the same sort of story. That's my younger daughter. Now we're getting, this is the next step. So we've still got that equipment, but this hasn't been cultivated. There's some residue there, there's weeds there, there's glyphosate in there, there's urea in there, there's seeding there, all happening at the same time. So we've stepped pretty quick, but the equipment is it's getting there, you know. What year is that? I would say that's a good question. Let me think. No, that's going to be after 1980. I'd say that's 81 or 82. We had a serious drought in 1980, and we didn't get the crop in. And I reflect on that looking back now, and we would have grown quite a good crop on that. But this is direct drilling. That's what this is called, and it was only just cranking up. I was probably one of the first in the district.
What was the first year you used chemicals?
We would have used chemical probably 5 years prior to that as an ester or something to kill turnip. We never had radish.
The 70s was the first time you
Some farmers, we didn't, because my grandfather didn't improve his pastures and then Dad planted clover, we never planted ryegrass. And we would we chipped double Gs, you know, sort of, some people let weeds happen. So I know farmers would have been using triflurum before then. We'd never needed to, we didn't have ryegrass. And so they were, of course, working the ground and then harrowing the triflurum in, very different concept to now. So right, there would have been, so I'm saying this is 1981, we would have used some chemical as in misted ester across for turnip. We didn't have radish, yeah. And some others would have been using triflurum for quite a while, but the chemicals were still we used to just drag a bag, our marker, we never, wasn't even a foam marker.
Did you ever sow the ryegrass, or did you manage to avoid it?
We got it everywhere now, don't worry.
You never
We
sowed it?
we never sowed it, but we bought a farm that had it. You know, if you revisit all that, a lot of things, we brought it with our sheep feed, we brought it in hay. Yeah. So this went on. It's just a general shot of harvesting. Now at the next step, so bigger tractor, more power, front wheel assist. It's a state-of-the-art combine just on the market. So it's got wider trash flow, high tension for direct drilling, so that it get into the ground. And interestingly, the implement behind, the rotary harrow, was to smooth the ground, to help with weed control and chemical incorporation. I used, in my business, if I grew 1,000 tonne of wheat, I sold 100 rams and had 100 bales of wool in a year, was good sort of benchmark. You know, it was very exciting to get that sort of, grow that sort of product. Wool was a beautiful product and I loved it and loved the excitement of shearing. But this journey, you know, this shot the kids starting to be part of the package. At my 20th wedding anniversary, he was my best man. Oh, Blighter, he was one of those special sheepdog, good sheepdogs, integral to the business. Now we're getting to bigger, serious boom spray. Fold out, no handling the chemicals, a lot more. I've got a story on that. Now this is the next machine. This is a triple disc seeder. So this is zero till. We were talking about no till and zero till with the guys yesterday. This is zero till. The disc, you could, in fact, at night time you couldn't see where you'd been. And I was just so passionate about my soil. I was losing interest in sheep. We were growing, and I saw that was the way to go. and so the sheep started to go. And then in the ground cover, about 5 years later, I was rethinking my zero till because I just wasn't winning. I was just shot of all the motorbikes. I'll get a bit of thing. Here's an implement that I'd bought. This is a Phoenix Harrow, a complete one. When I was zero till to get trifluorine working, I was having to tickle trifluorine in before we seeded, which was contradicting the whole concept. So I was glad to see that go, and sheep were about to go. There's my daughter working in the shearing shed. You can get wind erosion, not necessarily from sheep. This is peas. Peas vine, you harvest a beautiful crop and it just sits there and then it ends up on the fence and the paddock's bare. That's a neighbour's paddock, but it's overgrazed. We got to now a self-propelled header made in the States. This is all very exciting. We really, equipment's getting better. That's the stock agent, Goodbye Sheep. Sold my stud to a bloke that's still using our genetics, which is good. It's just an example in the office. We've now got maps, what's happening. We're starting to go to up and bat, etc. So we got a bit aggressive with some of the odd trees around. Lime. I can say I'm addicted to lime. We've put over 7,000 tonne of lime on our farm. We have soil tested to 30 centimetres. The pH is essential. We've got it correct to 30 centimetres. And I don't know whether many farmers have actually tested to 30 centimetres, let alone achieved it. I talked to Steve Jeffrey, what's the egg line? I nearly said Steve Powers.
Steve
Carr, that's right, regularly. And I'm very proud because I just learnt so long ago about, we were doing soil testing.
Did you incorporate that line?
No, never.
Leave it on the surface?
Yep.
And it changed the pH of the
Yeah, I've researched that. I actually got paid to, and we saw a response at 30 centimetres in 2 years.
on sandy soil.
But what it has to be, the pH has to be right on top.
Yeah.
But it'll never go anywhere until it's right on top. But most people, it's right on top, so it's right. But if it's below, so they're not topping it up. But there's no point in putting lime on if you don't need it. It's It's another shot of the lime. Now, I'm passionate about my soil. The livestock had gone, the farm was just humming, we got the pH right, and I just love going around and digging a hole and finding roots just going down there in the moist soil, in the rich. The soil was alive. And chemicals, the only way we can do it. And how do you control the weeds? I actually had a chaff cut at one stage where I used that. I've been using windrow burning, I think 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. And it's a job. Here's our latest. We've now had this equipment for a long time. It's quite sustainable. Powerful tractor, narrow points, press wheels. We double shooting, so we can choose where we put the fertiliser seed, how much. Sometimes when we don't know about where we want to plant the wheat because of where the moisture is, we'll plant half the wheat deep and half the wheat shallow. We'll always put the urea away from the seed. And it's a great concept. The Simplicity bins made in Dalby in Queensland. I just swear by that. We don't, but we can use variable rate quite simply. I actually bought 3 bins, seed, compound fertiliser and urea, but I bought the 3 bins to do variable rate of potassium. The day after potassium got very dear and we started researching in our local research group. A lot of the time you can't justify potassium, so we now spread potassium we variable rate it by spreading it. And so we put down some nitrogen at seeding time. It's all with the seed. And we've adapted totally to dry seeding. In fact, I think it's the greatest thing out once you've got everything running well. For the last 3 years we haven't dry seeded anything, and puts pressure on seeding time. When we went out of livestock, we had to be diversified. Went to hay. I did it for 1 year and I'll never do it again, just because you have to be professional at your hay. You've got no control over the market, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't for me. Liquid nitrogen, we use a lot of that in the right year. We just, it's playing the season. Boom spray, this is just showing up and back. Boom spray is essential part of the equipment. This is filling it, just so we can put seed in and fertiliser at the same time. All these guys have got some very flash equipment, and we go 24 hours a day, and my cousin's got 2 machines and big truck, and we nearly did as much with our old gear as he did with his 2, just because they couldn't keep up, or things aren't running. This is all very simple. I'll just show shots of the burn spray because it works all year. My son-in-law's latest investments in you. And this is just an example of this time of the year. We've got to really, with canola and lupins, watch for bugs. Use a sweep net. This is harvest. This is a better shot. This is quite a while ago, but so there's a truck there taking the grain away. This harvest, he just topped him up. We've got a seed cleaner there because we're trying to get some quality seed in the mix so it's receivable. This is just our truck that happened to be in the shot. We don't cart any of our own grain at all. Yeah. And I've sort of got to, it's just some joys of harvesting. It's great when everything's going good. There's a little yield monitor. You can look up there and see it going over 3 tonne.
Just before you deliver the seed, you clean it a little bit.
Very seldom.
In dirty paddocks, just because otherwise
Yes, right. Sometimes it's because it'll be rejected, but honestly, that photo is 15 years old. We because of the capacity now to have something clean is just impossible. But the receival point now, I've got like there's this sort of cliff face with a number of weeds or a fault, and so one load will be perfect, next load will be, if you like, 1 over, and they've realised, well, we could take that home and mix it, or we can put it in there and mix it. So they've given us they call it optimisation, which has been a great thing, taking the pressure of us of losing a lot of money for something that the rest of the wheat was perfect. It's just a rare thing.
So, like if you clean 10% of it, you could get the whole load down that 1%?
Yeah, well, that's what we were doing sometimes, but now we don't have to do it. And often that's, now our weed control's got a lot smarter, so we make sure that there should never be a weed issue in the sample. Sometimes the size of grain or something like that. So it was a thing that was done a lot, and it's hardly done now. Yep. Half it's because of the capacity, some of it's because of the system that they allow you to blend your wheat at the bin, and just actually physically doing it. But there's plenty of machinery around at harvest time, and all sorts of trucks are turning up, and I just find it exciting seeing that go away. Harvest is a joy as long as there's nothing too dramatic. We've stored grain on the farm. This is lupins. We're putting it in a pit. We covered it. Some moisture got in. I'll leave storing to someone else. This is at the receival point. I thought I'd just run through it there. So in Calabaran now, this is our hill. It's the town was located there because of this hill. The town's just over here. CBH's got an enormous facility because we're on the main east-west line. So we've got the railway line coming through to Kwinana. This has become a very big point for farmers coming from probably 100 kilometres north or south of us to bring it to this receival point, some of the grains. So they're spearing, this is a spear goes down to get a sample. They take a number of samples in the truck. It goes up inside and they assess it for its quality, and then trucks take it to where it's got to go. And then this is, when we're talking about augers and grids, here is a huge conveyor taking that away, if you understand. So the truck's just tipping that out as quick as anything. It'd be 25 tonne, they'd just drop that in a couple of minutes. We were trying at the Darren yesterday, we explained an auger with the truck backing up to it. It's very different to the receival point. And these are these big bulkheads that all get filled up and all emptied down the railway line and exported. So now we're going to get to a bit of land care. This is salinity, dry land salinity, which has become a bugbear. It's probably noticed in the late 60s. And what it is there's salt in the land, there's salt in the rainwater. So when the rain falls and when it moves and gets to somewhere where it's waterlogged and so it evaporates, it leaves the salt behind. So the ground collapses, and also there's a rising water table because there's water underneath that's also salty. So the land becomes totally degraded and will not grow anything. And
That's the low spot in the field.
look, there's a lot lower down here, but it's a tight spot, if you like. There's probably a barrier here, so it's sort of held. It's a low spot there. Yeah. And there's been a lot of work done on our farm. We've got a huge reserve next to CSIRO sort of got involved, and the solution to the salinity is to replant the whole country back to trees, because there was an equal balance there. The trees used it. So this photo's not that old, but it would have been in the mid-70s that we realised that we should do something about it. And this isn't happening here, but there was interceptor banks designed, and the bulldozer would push up a big bank and it'd intercept the water that's travelling underneath as well. And if there wasn't, the idea was to just do a contour down and they would just hold the water. Now I'll get onto some issues. Resistant radish, hard to kill weeds. And I want to talk about that. There's other things that happen on farms. There's storms. There's a good tractor in that shed. That shed was busted by a storm on a super shed roof. Bogged. Whoops, 8 tonne of wheat on the ground. Whoops, 25 tonne of lime on the ground. Oops, 10 tonne of canola on the road. Broken axle, broken bearing, wrecked tyre. This is serious. This is the main tractor. A seal goes while we're seeding. Took 5 days to fix. Part had to come from the States. It did get back delivered to us and we couldn't wait to get working. Now another story, another thing. This is this year. When you don't get enough rain to germinate a crop, you can see on the softer soil type, this is land we only bought 3 years ago, so it hasn't had the love, but that just did not get wet enough to get up. And if you use your imagination, you can see a little wheat plant there just hanging in, but exactly what we got to talk this afternoon about. Those plants are completely wrecked. They will have the tiniest, shortest head, they'll probably have very good grain. There's another shot of it. And also unreliable germination. This canola is always hard to get out of the ground. It can just do your head in. This is hail. See the bits of wheat on the ground? Heaving heads, more grains. There's floods, there's fires. There's fun. There's nothing like getting up at mate's plane and having a look at your farm from the air. It's a real treat. It's exciting to see what you've done with the land. And then there's a crop. You see it germinate, see it grow a bit more, family look at it, becomes canola. It's beautiful. The same with the lupins. It's just like they're your babies. Now, I just want to talk about research. We've got a long-term lime trial on our farm. I'm assessed by it. That has not produced any evidence. And so we're just hunting that down. The guys come and do it. We do our own trials ourselves in the paddocks, mixed with this group. There's a Kilobaran group. Get together, about 10 farmers. We help each other out with the counting of plants, etc. We visit factories. We have soil pits. We have field days. Go on bus trips. Go down to Esperance. Go up to Geraldton. Go over east. That's in Tasmania. That's favour beans down south. Tell him he's dreaming. Chaff top, what's it called? What's that called? Putting the wind on the tram lines. Yep. Chaff line, that's field day, I think it. Oh, okay, that's in York. That's out at Bedallin where it didn't rain one year. We got out there to mix with them. There's sitting in trials. There's visiting friends that are doing something different. Or growing something different. Also, you go overseas. We went to South America and South Africa 17 years ago, using a knife roller and keeping residue. Then we went to the States, Bill Crabtree, saw a driverless tractor, GM Palmer Amaranth, GM corn, wheat in New Zealand, rice in Vietnam, China. Here we go. I'm at a research place in China where they're using a rain simulator with their soils. We never saw a crop in China. Agriculture trip, and it was just a bit hard to get to that, but it's the terracotta warriors. Turkey, India, So we've travelled a lot. And another special thing about farming is have friends come and visit, help, look, do, help, fun. What about this, guys? I expanded that for Jeannie. She's getting a bit fat. Oh, I've got to go back one. This chap here is an integral link to our business because he is a staff member, works for 3 weeks a year during seeding, 12 hours a day for the 3 weeks. And he cares, we care, so we've got a great arrangement. Any farm can't run without reliable family or staff. And we have family holidays. And then there's things on the farm. This is a mountain devil. This is a malleefowl nest that are now completely endangered, but this was in the reserve narrow place, but only this harvest I saw a malleefowl. So exciting, and it might be because we've got control of the foxes. We have snakes, and we have yabbies in the dams, and that freshwater shellfish, that's a real treat. And then I want to just talk a bit about succession. This is 3 years old. Ebony and Jason came on the farm 3 years prior, managed. Do you want to go farming? Yes. So it has to be a very generous arrangement, but we're all very proud. My father was very good to me. His father was terrible to him, but he survived. He nearly left. And every farm has junk, and I think most farms by the 3rd or 4th generation, you're due for a clearing sale. But I had a clearance sale and we just cleaned the junk out and had a good party. Bought our dream home in Perth. It's got a view of the city. That's another issue. The daughter-in-law lives in the mother-in-law's house. It's not a lot of fun. Promise you a lovely home one day, dear. We've got the caravan. I live in that in the bush when I'm up at the farm, in trees that we've planted. We'll go around Australia and have fun with that one day. Rain. Rain at the right time. Woo-hoo. Rainbows. This is a memorial to my father in the paddock. Another shot of that, he's always keeping an eye on me. And then I just flash through this is what we see as we work. And and there's wildflowers on our farm. I'll put this plaque up recognising my grandfather, my father, whose excellent farming passions established in Enyanine. I defied the adage of the 3rd generation lose it and made my daughter Ebony succeed as the ones before her. I've actually found out since, of course, that my great-grandfather owned the land. I didn't know that until recently, just going through some old documents. I never knew that. So, though farm was established in 1906, it was actually purchased in 1868. These are the sheds that my grandfather built. They're still in good use. We've maintained them. As grandchildren, Steve took that photo. Yeah. That was at a trial we had on the farm. Sometimes they'd get dressed up as a princess, but they still go to work, but then they get exhausted. They've got the wellies on. Look at this, they're out, bit boggy, delivering the fuel today, bopper. I'll fix it. Now I ride a motorbike with some friends. It's a great release. We've been around Australia, etc. I've been doing extraordinary things. One of the greatest things I've done in my life is ride a motorbike up to the top of Alaska, through Mexico to the bottom of Argentina. They got there 17,000 kilometres. We did 34,000 doing that. Now I've got some hobby jobs. So this is what sort of where I'm at now. My son-in-law and daughter are going great on the farm. I help at seeding time and harvest, do the night shift and harvest for 18 hours a day or something. I love it. I don't think. I just look what the country... Whoops, wait a minute. So I do crop assessing, and that's analysing loss. This is bad hail damage. So that they love to have farmers do that because they've got the understanding, they've got the relationship, and so I go there to assess how much they've lost so they can claim insurance. And it's something I get a lot of pleasure out of doing, meeting other farmers. I've been on the stage, I've learnt my lines, less the lamb while I'm driving the tractor. And there's these good guys here. Yeah. And it's all about family. It really is about family. And there's something about farming families that are either busted or they're going great, and ours is growing great. Thank you.